If I had known how things would turn out, maybe I wouldn't have been so upset. But on the other hand, being an ordinary guy with normal reactions, I probably would have felt the same way no matter what. Even the most persistent man would not be able to react calmly to this. It's just impossible. Say, hey, Neil, I called out to the guy sitting at the bar. Haven't seen you around here much. Oh, hey, Rich, he replied somewhat glumly. I don't usually come to pubs, but tonight's an exception. He didn't seem very cheerful, but then again, this place wasn't much of a pub. So, what should I say? He clearly wasn't in a good mood. What's wrong, mate? I asked cautiously. Neil wasn't really a close friend of mine. In fact, I barely saw him except at the occasional party. However, his wife, Judy, and my wife, Corinne, were quite close, so I thought I knew a bit about what was happening in their lives. It's fine, Rich, he continued gloomily, barely meeting my gaze. I'm not blaming you for anything. It's not really your fault. Huh? What? My fault? I had no clue what he was talking about. What's not my fault, Neil? I asked tentatively, not wanting to make things worse. Instead of answering, he just sat there, resting his chin on his clenched fists and letting out a long, drawn-out sigh. Come on, mate. What's going on? I was genuinely concerned for Neil, who was usually the life of the party, and also curious about what, if any, role I might have in his distress. It's Judy, of course, Neil said. Her and that damn wife of yours. That caught me off guard. Corinne and I had been married for just over 10 years at that point. I was just past 40, and she was just under. We were so well matched that it felt like we could almost read each other's minds. I wasn't too pleased about some guy I barely knew talking about my wife in that manner. What on earth do you mean by making a remark like that? I asked firmly, though I kept my temper in check. Oh, come on, Rich. He scowled at me. Don't act all innocent. You know exactly what's been going on. Something was happening? What was he talking about? I have no idea what you're referring to, Neil, I said, deliberately keeping my voice calm, realizing how upset he was. Oh no, Rich, he nearly spat at me. And I suppose you don't know anything about the Golden Flower either. I shook my head in denial. I'd never heard of the place. It sounded like the name of a Chinese restaurant or something. I hoped he would explain further, but to no avail. Slamming the remnants of his pint on the bar, he stood up, glared at me, and stormed out of the pub without another word, leaving me standing there with my insides in turmoil. What was all that about then, Rich? Asked Fred, the landlord, approaching me. Damned if I know, Fred, I replied. You'd better get me a pint of your best. I've clearly got some thinking to do. I sat there nursing my pint, trying to make sense of everything, and the only thing that kept popping into my head was probably the least acceptable possibility. But what could Judy and my wife be up to that would make Neil so upset, and why on earth would he think I knew all about it? And, for heaven's sake, what did a Chinese restaurant have to do with any of this? I had no clue. Best to forget about it for now. I'd ask Judy when I saw her later, but I had a nagging feeling it wouldn't be that straightforward. Ever heard of a Chinese place called the Golden Flower? I asked Fred, but he was just as baffled as I was and couldn't provide any answers. So that evening I trudged home feeling utterly confused, unsure of what to tell Corinne, clueless about the location of this mysterious Chinese restaurant, and wondering if I'd even get a truthful answer. Hey, honey, how was work today? Nothing seemed off, did it? I suppose I half expected to come home and find her in tears or something. Not bad, I replied. I stopped by the Red Lion for a pint. Good, she said with a smile. You work hard and you deserve a drink every now and then. Neil was there, I mentioned casually, though I noticed she tensed up slightly. He seemed a bit upset about something, I continued, and this time I saw her smile fade for a moment. About that order you were chasing, Rich, Corinne said, clearly trying to change the subject. Any idea why he was so upset? I asked, steering the conversation back. No, Corinne said, avoiding eye contact. You were talking about the order. No, I wasn't, I said. We were talking about Neil. Corinne gave me an unhappy look, said she had no clue why Neil was upset, and then turned and went upstairs without another word. Damn it. What about my dinner? I guess that wasn't the most pressing thing on my mind right then. I backed out. I knew it. She knew it. And we never addressed it. I tried to act like everything was fine, and Corinne tried to act like everything was normal. What a mess. What a dreadful week that was. I was in denial, and Corinne, well, I'm still not sure. I didn't understand it back then, and I still don't really get it now. For some reason, I searched every Chinese restaurant within miles and couldn't find a single one named anything like the Golden Flower. I avoided asking her, and I admit it. You might think otherwise, but when the woman you love and cherish seems to be hiding something from you, all you want to do is hide yourself. Believe me, that's how it is when you love her enough. Hey, Rich, that Chinese restaurant you were trying to find the other day, Fred, the pub landlord, asked as I sat glumly at his bar about a week later. Did you ever track it down? No, Fred, I replied. I checked the yellow pages and everything, but there's nothing like that around here. Did you check out clubs and lounge bars? He inquired. Of course I hadn't. There's a place with that name in the town center, he informed me. It might be a bit posh for us, Rich, he joked, but it's the place to be seen by some. Naturally, that piqued my curiosity. I had to find out where it was. An hour later, I found myself parked outside the venue, which was shrouded in dim lighting and had a subdued atmosphere. Oh, well, I half expected to be turned away, but they let me in without any issues, even though I wasn't exactly dressed for a night of fine dining and drinking. But it was early. I discovered I was in what was labeled as a bar lounge. What exactly was that? Honestly, I wasn't sure. Looking around, I realized it was a relatively upscale club with a bar, a small dance floor, and some private booths, just the kind of place where one might go to meet women. Except there weren't any. Bit early for the ladies, my apparently personal bartender explained. They usually don't show up until after 10. I can wait, I told him. It'll be worth it, he assured me. I took a sip of my drink and pondered what to say next. It wasn't a hard choice. Does a woman named Corinne Walters still come around here? I asked, trying to sound as nonchalant as possible. There are a few people named Corinne, he answered. What does she look like? Blonde, I said, maintaining my composure despite my racing heart. About 5'4", nice legs, medium build, pretty well endowed. Does she come in with a redhead? He asked. Probably, I replied, relieved to have hit the jackpot so quickly. Judy was indeed a redhead, and they weren't very common. I nodded, still trying to stay cool despite my mounting agitation. Yeah, he continued. She comes in most Wednesday nights and sometimes during the week after work, I guess. And what does she do when she's here? I inquired. Damn it. Too specific, too direct, too involved. Is she a friend of yours or something? The bartender asked, stepping back a bit. Just a friend, I said. But I had already unsettled him, and he retreated to the far end of the bar. Damn it. It took him a good 10 minutes to come back, and unsurprisingly, he wasn't as friendly. Another beer, please, I said, handing over a 10-pound note. Keep the change. His eyes might not have exactly lit up, but he definitely gave me his full attention. So, about Corinne, I pressed. What does she get up to? What does she and her friend do when they're here? We stared at each other for what felt like forever, and eventually he was the one who cracked. Is she your girlfriend or something? He asked. What's your interest? Actually, she's my wife, I answered honestly. And I want to know what she gets up to during her night out with her friend. He hesitated again, but when I placed a 50 on the bar, even though I kept my hand firmly on it, he started talking. She comes in with the redhead like I mentioned, and they dance a bit, chat a bit, just the usual stuff. The usual things married women do in a place like this? I pressed. A lot of them are married, he admitted. They flirt just as much as the single girls, sometimes even more. And what about the two we're discussing? Well, he hesitated, then continued. I'd say they're not much different from the rest. So they flirt with the guys here, do they? I suppose you could call it flirting, he said, his gaze fixed on the 50-pound note still under my hand. And how far does this flirting go? He simply shrugged and gave me a blank look. I pushed the note a bit further up the bar but kept my hand on it. I didn't need to say anything more to keep him talking. There's a lot of messing about, he conceded. You know, touchy-feely stuff. It happens all the time in a place like this. And what does that mean? I pressed, my stomach twisting. Are they touching her? He shrugged again, which I took as a yes. What about her breasts? Wouldn't be surprised, the barman agreed. They get up to all sorts once they've had a few drinks and hit the dance floor. What else? That was indeed the question, and he stayed silent, once again glancing at the $50 bill I still held under my hand. I slid the money toward him and let go. So? It was the crucial question. Some of the girls do go outside with the men, he confessed. I'm not saying that those two do, but I don't precisely monitor everything my customers do. I haven't seen them leave with any men, but as I mentioned, he left the rest unsaid, allowing me to interpret it as I wished. I pressed the bartender for more details, but he wouldn't elaborate, and honestly, the information I already had made any further investment seem pointless. I went home. Was it still home? Yes, but it wasn't the same as it had been before, and it likely never would be again. Hi, honey, Corinne greeted me as I walked through the door. You're late. Did you work late? No, I replied as casually as I could manage. I just stopped by the pub and ended up having one more pint than usual. That's all right, darling, she said, smiling and moving towards me with open arms for a hug. Was this a mere coincidence? Or did her sudden change in mood have something to do with my activities that evening? I couldn't believe that the bartender had called her to give her a heads up. Then again, I still couldn't wrap my head around the fact that it was my wife he was talking about. Nevertheless, I embraced her and for the umpteenth time marveled at how delightful it felt to have her firm breasts pressed against my chest. But then I recalled that many other men had likely enjoyed that sensation recently, and the moment lost its charm. I wasn't ready to confront her just yet. I felt I needed more evidence. After all, he hadn't explicitly said that she had been with other men, but he hadn't said she hadn't either. Still, it didn't mean I couldn't stir things up a bit. Did you find out why Neil was upset the other night, Corinne? I asked, holding her close so she couldn't escape. No idea, she responded almost too quickly as if she had rehearsed her answer. Why would I know? Well, Judy's your friend, I reminded her. You go out for drinks with her every Wednesday. I thought she might have mentioned something. Corinne tried to pull away from me, but I held on firmly, preventing her from escaping and avoiding my questions. She hasn't told me anything, Corinne responded curtly. Judy isn't fooling around behind Neil's back, is she? That was raising the stakes a bit. How would I know? Corinne retorted, trying to break free from my grip. Well, you go out with her on Wednesday nights and never come home until late. I figured you might have noticed if she was seeing someone else. Of course I haven't, Rich, she snapped. Why are you asking me these things? So you're absolutely certain Judy isn't cheating on Neil on Wednesday nights? I pressed further. You're sure about that? Get off me, Corinne exclaimed, finally managing to push me away. Stop treating me like this. I haven't done anything wrong. I didn't accuse you of anything wrong, Corinne, I clarified. We were discussing Judy, not you. Why would I think you've done something wrong? Her expression said it all, and with tears welling up in her eyes, she turned and ran into the kitchen. Damn it! It was true. The problem was I still wasn't sure what was true. Dinner that night was as subdued as one could expect. I refrained from accusing her of anything, and she didn't offer any explanations. For the next few days, our unhappy routine continued as usual. Wednesday night came around, and as per usual, she prepared and went out with Judy. Her outfit was typical, a pretty dress that was neither too short nor too revealing, paired with unremarkable high heels. She looked lovely. Indeed, she looked exactly how a husband might hope his wife would look when going out without him. "See you later, Rich," she said. "I won't be out too late tonight." I merely nodded and returned to my book, contemplating what not too late might mean. She usually came home well after midnight, by which time I was usually already in bed. Determined to stay up late that night, I resolved to find out what time she actually returned, and in what condition. Well, Corinne surprised me. Around 10:30, I heard the front door open, and in walked my beautiful wife, looking as fresh as ever. "Hi, honey," she said cheerfully. "I missed you, so I came home early." I embraced her and told her how much I'd missed her over the past few weeks, how I missed our closeness, and how things hadn't felt the same for months. Corinne wept in my arms, apologized for her neglect, and promised that things would be different from now on. That night, we shared an intimate and passionate moment together. It had been a while since we had been that close. So, what does this give us? I was quite sure that my wife had been having an affair behind my back for several months. I wasn't completely sure if she went too far with other men. To be honest, I thought it was unlikely. I didn't have any concrete evidence, but that was my impression. However, there was no doubt that she was behaving like a single woman, flirting, kissing, and probably letting other men touch her. Let me be clear. I didn't like it at all, and deep down I was fuming. However, she had narrowly avoided a serious situation and was aware of it. I really didn't want to ruin our otherwise wonderful marriage unless it was necessary, so maybe I could have ignored her actions if it really was over. And it really seemed like it was over. Over the next 5 or 6 weeks, our marriage seemed to return to what it was in the early days. Light smiles, gentle touches, and an abundance of affection. The two girls continued to walk in the evenings as before, but always returned home before 11. So you might think that's the end of the story. Not a perfect solution, but with some effort on my part, a happy ending. Of course not. I should have known better. Around the 7th week of our blissful marital recovery, Corinne kissed me goodbye as she headed out to join Judy for their evening out. "Hope you don't mind, honey," she said with a smile. "We might be out a bit later than usual. It's one of the other girls' birthdays." "That's fine," I replied with a smile of my own. "Have a great time." I watched her leave the room with a cheerful stride, dressed in a simple skirt that ended just above her knees and a knitted top that covered her, but still accentuated the lovely shape of her ample breasts. She looked great, and I couldn't help but grin. Then, it struck me. She had never mentioned any other girlfriends before. But was that really strange? Or was it? Why was I feeling that uneasy churn in my stomach again, a sensation I hadn't experienced in weeks? I don't know why, but I found myself dialing Judy and Neil's home number. It had been weeks since I'd last spoken to him at the pub, and I was unsure of the reception I'd get. "Hi, Neil, it's Rich," I said. "Corinne's husband." "Oh. Hello, Rich," he responded, sounding perfectly normal. "What can I do for you?" "I was just wondering if Judy has left yet," I inquired, unsure of what else to say and regretting not thinking this through more before calling. "Yes, she has left," he answered. "She's meeting Corinne at the restaurant. Is there something important?" "No, nothing important," I replied. "Everything okay with you and Judy now?" It was a bit direct, but he sighed and assured me they'd worked things out, even apologizing for being short with me that night. I told him it was fine. I hung up the phone. Damn it. Meeting at the restaurant, huh? So why had Corinne just had an early dinner and told me 20 minutes ago that they were meeting at the George and Dragon pub? It could be a mistake. It might be perfectly innocent. Or maybe not. I thought about it for a moment and decided a little investigation wouldn't hurt. I went upstairs, took a quick shower, and changed into some casual clothes more fitting for a night out. Half an hour later, I found myself outside the Golden Flower, questioning whether I was being foolish but resolute to continue. Another 5 minutes passed, and I was ordering a beer from the bartender, the same one I had spoken to before, as I had waited for him to be available. "Seen Corinne and her red-headed friend in here recently?" I asked, looking him straight in the eye. It took him about 5 or 6 seconds to recognize me, but only a couple more to notice the tenor I held up. "No, mate," he said, reaching for the money. "Honestly, I haven't seen them for a while." That made sense. Maybe I was chasing shadows after all, but I decided to enjoy my pint anyway, pleased to appreciate all the talent around. He didn't offer any change, so I figured he was being honest. I finished my pint and headed to the restroom. Hey, come on, that's just what a man does. When I came out of the loo, damn it, bloody hell, I almost ran into Corinne and Judy. Damn it. To be fair, I might not have recognized them immediately, and if they hadn't been surrounded by 4 or 5 guys, we would have walked right into each other. You're wondering why I didn't recognize them straight away, aren't you? Go on, admit it. When your wife leaves the house dressed in a somewhat elegant manner, and then you see her shortly afterward in something like what Corinne was wearing, well, let me explain. Corinne was in... Well, it was a dress, to put it simply. It's hard to call it anything else, but traditionally dresses cover a fair amount of the wearer. This one, however, did not seem to follow that tradition. All right, maybe I'm overreacting a bit. The dress was very backless, so short it barely resembled a skirt, and her cleavage was so pronounced that words almost seem unnecessary. But to be honest, it was quite a shock seeing my beloved wife dressed this way for the first time. I had no idea she owned such a dress, and Judy, well, she was matching Corinne's style. Corinne must have changed her outfit somewhere after leaving our house. I couldn't help but wonder how she would look when she returned home. The guys were all over both of them, and even though they made a token effort to keep them at a distance, it was clear they were reveling in the attention. "Great to see you back," I heard one guy say. "Where have you two been?" asked another. "Come join us at our table," offered a third, and by that point I was really irritated. I stayed in the background as a stream of different men approached them, took them to the dance floor, and tried to undress them. They almost succeeded, well, maybe not quite, but Corinne and Judy kept laughing and giggling, clearly enjoying the display as various parts of their bodies were shown off to the onlookers. I didn't. Let's be clear. I didn't laugh or giggle. I didn't enjoy it at all. I was fuming while my wife and her friend flirted with anyone who approached them, and there was no shortage of attention. The nerve. The audacity. This was the loving wife who had kissed me goodbye this morning and smiled at me affectionately as she left earlier that night. A friend's birthday? Where was that bloody friend? Have a drink on the house. I looked up and saw the bartender standing there. "Sorry, buddy," he continued, "but I was honest. I haven't seen any of them before tonight." "I know," I replied. "I believe you. What went wrong?" "What is it?" he asked with a hint of sympathy. "She did it," I said, and we both nodded in agreement. I watched in disgust as my so-called wife flitted from man to man, paying no attention to our marriage. I saw how a group of otherwise ordinary men used her and her friend to their advantage. They touched them. I felt sick and wanted to run away, but I had another idea. Making my way through the crowd, I headed towards Judy, deliberately ignoring my wife's antics. In the end, she pushed some guy away with a laugh, and I smoothly took his place. "Hello, handsome," she said, slightly slurred because of the alcohol that everyone was pouring into her. What are you trying to achieve? As expected, she didn't recognize me, barely looked up, more interested in what I had to offer. I wrapped my arms around her and let myself do something I would never have done before. It was very intimate, and she was amazed at my persistence. "Hi, Judy," I said calmly. "How was your evening at the restaurant?" It took her a while to realize that. It was funny to watch the realization hit her. "Rich?" That was all she could say, looking up at me with a stunned expression on her face. "Your outfit is beautiful," I said, pinching her. "Get off me, asshole," she screamed when she recognized me. "What do you think you're doing?" "I'm just taking the opportunity," I told her, "like the other guys here." Get off me, you idiot," she screamed, pushing me away in fright. "Do you think my wife could be more available to me tonight than you are, Judy?" With that, I stepped back and found myself surrounded by a group of angry men. They all wanted to take full advantage of my wife and her friend, and as a group, they were eager to deal with me. They could have beaten me to a pulp if they wanted, and at that moment, I would have gladly faced them all. It was the bartender. It turned out his name was Jerry, and perhaps that 50 pounds and the rest of the money was the best investment I'd ever made. "Back off, you lot," I heard him yell. "Leave him alone, or you'll have me to answer to." What a guy. What a friend. Even though he was just a 50-pound friend, I needed him at that moment, as I was on the verge of being pummeled. Jerry skillfully separated me from the unruly crowd and guided me towards the exit. "Get out of here while you're still in one piece," he wisely advised, pushing me towards the door. And me? I saw Judy urgently pulling Corinne away from another guy, shouting at her. As she glanced over at me, our eyes met for a brief, intense moment. I saw the shock. I saw the disappointment. I saw the shame on her face. Then I was gone. As I carefully navigated my car out of the parking lot, I saw Corinne rushing out of the club. A guy was trying to hold her back, but she swung and hit him squarely in the face, almost bringing him to his knees. She saw my car and ran after me, knowing she couldn't catch me but determined not to give up. After a few hundred yards, I saw her collapse in the middle of the road, and as I drove away, I left her there crumpled on the asphalt. It's a tough situation, that's for sure, both for me and for her. She didn't come back that night, but around midnight I got a call from Neil. "Hey, Rich," he began. "Corinne's here at our place." "So what?" I snapped. "She wants to know if she can come home," he continued. "Tell her to leave me alone," I yelled into the phone and hung up. I left the phone off the hook. Not a pleasant situation, is it? What to do? I couldn't care less. On Friday evening, when I got home from work, I saw Corinne's car in the driveway. She had come back. But to whose home? If things were bad before, well, you can imagine how they were now. She insisted she hadn't been with anyone else, and it was probably true, but she just didn't get it. Why is life so complicated? It only got worse. Within a few days, I found myself resenting her, even though I still loved her. I was at a loss about what to do, except that I knew she had betrayed me twice, and I couldn't accept that. Trust was gone. I needed someone to talk to. But who? I didn't have siblings, close relatives, or even good friends. For the past few years, since moving to this area, it had just been me and her, Corinne. Foolish? Maybe. I ended up going back to that damned club. Don't ask me why, I couldn't explain it. All I knew was that my problems seemed to start there. And that's where I had my own personal 50-pound confidant. Foolish? Definitely, but it worked for me. "You wouldn't be the first husband in this kind of situation," he told me. "It happens all the time." "But what should I do?" I asked, feeling hopeless. He shrugged in that uncertain way and shook his head. He didn't seem to have any more idea than I did. After cleaning a few glasses, he came back over 10 minutes later. "Rich," he said, since we were on a first-name basis by then. Why not give her a taste of her own medicine? As he spoke, he gestured toward the other end of the bar, where I noticed a very attractive young woman sitting alone. She probably wouldn't be interested in me, I remarked. She can't be older than her mid-20s. In my experience, Jerry said solemnly, that wouldn't be an issue. I'd guess she's in her late 20s, maybe even 30. Do you think she's hoping to be picked up? I asked, feeling unsure. I hadn't tried flirting for a long time. I'm sure she is, Rich, he replied. Just waiting for someone like you. Maybe she's married, I suggested, looking for an excuse, though I had to admit I was quite tempted. I doubt it, Jerry said. In fact, I'm fairly certain she's married. Maybe she's waiting for her husband, I said hesitantly. I highly doubt it, Rich, Jerry said with a grin. I'm pretty sure the guy in the blue top sitting in that booth is her husband. What? You heard me, Jerry confirmed. He came in about 20 minutes ago and sat down, and she arrived about 15 minutes later. She keeps glancing over at him, and his eyes are fixed on her. You're joking, Jerry, I stammered. What's going on? Just their thing, Jerry explained. I haven't seen these two before, but it's not uncommon. Sometimes a couple will come in, act like they don't know each other, and the guy gets a kick out of watching other men hit on his wife. But what usually happens? I asked, astonished by his explanation. Not much usually, Jerry said. The guy might get a few close dances, maybe a touch or a kiss or two, but rarely anything more. Occasionally, the guy might get the woman to go outside with him, but it depends on the couple and how far they're willing to let it go. I glanced at the young woman with dark hair, clearly dressed for a night out. A short black cocktail dress with a low-cut neckline and some eye-catching high heels. She was slim but had a nice figure, with great legs that were on display as she sat perched on a bar stool. So, how far do you think she'd be willing to go? I asked my host. Not very far, he predicted. She seems too nervous. It might be her first time. I think you'll be safe, Rich. You can have a bit of fun without getting too involved. I looked at Jerry, impressed by how well he understood my mood. I was interested in some flirting, but didn't want it to go beyond that. That's why he's such a great bartender. Do you think she'd be interested in me? I was still unsure and anxious about approaching a stranger. Well, that young guy over there tried to hit on her and didn't get anywhere, he said. She glanced at the guy in blue, and he shook his head. Maybe she didn't like him or he was too young. You might have better luck. Could all this be happening right under my nose? Look, Jerry, I can't just walk up and say hello. She might tell me to leave. Jerry chuckled and told me to leave it to him. He'd go over, offer her a drink, and say it was from me. How do you know what she wants to drink? I asked. I'm a bartender, he said with a grin. It's my job. Silly question. I stayed where I was while he prepared a drink I didn't recognize and then headed down to the other end of the bar. He handed the drink to the woman who looked towards me, so I gave her a friendly nod. The girl took the drink, shot a quick glance at Blue Shirt, and nodded in my direction, lifting the glass in a salute. I was in. My heart was racing, and I had no idea what I was getting myself into. Trying not to embarrass myself, I hopped off my stool, walked up to the bar, and greeted her. Hi, she said. Thanks for the drink. I'm Rich, I introduced myself. Quite the cliché, huh? Hello, Rich, she replied. I'm Cindy. So far, so good. I saw Jerry giving me a discreet thumbs up from behind the bar. That's when I noticed how nervous Cindy was. She wasn't visibly shaking, but she was close to it. We talked about various things for a while, and she gradually relaxed, as did I. We were getting along well, so I asked her to dance. I'm no Fred Astaire, but I know the basics, and she followed my simple steps quite well. At first I was a bit stiff, but by the second dance she was comfortably pressed against me. Not too close, just the right amount. She felt amazing. I wanted to kiss her, but the moment didn't present itself, so I just enjoyed having a beautiful young woman in my arms. After the third dance, she suggested we return to our seats, and once there, she went to the ladies' room. It was only when Blue Shirt picked up his phone that I realized what was happening. She had gone to the restroom to call him, maybe to see if he approved. I wasn't sure, but everything so far suggested that she liked me, so I hoped he would too. This was confirmed when Cindy reappeared, smiled at me, and climbed back onto her stool. By either chance or choice, her already short skirt had risen even higher, exposing a long stretch of her bare legs. "What's got you grinning?" she asked as I struggled to contain my amusement at the situation. "What do you think?" I responded somewhat harshly. Despite her attractiveness, I had no desire to be humiliated by her and the other person. To my surprise, Cindy slumped slightly on her stool, and I noticed what seemed like a tear in her eye. I felt a pang of regret for my words. "Sorry, Cindy," I said eventually. "I don't mean to upset you, but it's a bit obvious, you know." Listen to me. I was talking like some sophisticated know-it-all. Just half an hour earlier, Jerry had filled me in, and I had been completely naive. "I don't know what you're talking about," Cindy mumbled, clearly distressed. "You don't know who Blue Shirt over there is?" I asked, trying to soften my tone. "Oh no. Why did I say that?" I'd made her cry. What's a guy supposed to do in a situation like this? Naturally, I reached over and put my arm around her. "Sorry, Cindy." I found myself comforting her. "I didn't mean to be harsh." "You're just like my damn husband," she sobbed into my shoulder. Soon enough, I was kissing her forehead, comforting her, and whispering sweet words to soothe her. "Let's dance again," I suggested, pulling her up. I was aware that sooner or later Blue Shirt would notice something was amiss. When we were on the dance floor, she pressed her body against mine again and sobbed softly throughout the first dance. "What's wrong, Cindy?" I asked, feeling that she was beginning to calm down. "I won't do anything you don't want to do." "It's not about you, Rich," she said with obvious chagrin. "That's the jerk Tom I'm married to." Gradually, I learned the details from her. She did what she did against her will. Her husband Tom had been pressuring her for 6 months to fulfill his fantasy of seeing her with another man. She was disgusted by the idea and resolutely refused, but one evening Tom came home completely drunk with a couple of his friends. "Oh no," I reacted instantly. "Don't tell me he did it." "No," she sobbed, burying her face in my shoulder. "But after he teased me, I told him to get out and tried to go to my bedroom." "Well done," I said, trying to cheer him up somehow. "But he grabbed me and threw me on the couch," she exclaimed. "How could any husband do that?" I was perplexed, and anger was growing in me. "And that wasn't all," she continued, starting to cry again. I pulled her to me, not knowing what to say to comfort her. "His friends started bullying me," she continued, "but by then I was screaming as loud as I could, and eventually Tom told them to stop." What happened next? Tom just hugged me. By then, all 3 of them were already standing there, laughing and mocking me. What could I say? I had the urge to go up to the guy in the blue shirt and hit him. Then Tom let me go, and when I tried to run away. By the time I managed to hide in my room. "Have they come for you?" "No," she sobbed. "I locked myself in the bedroom and didn't see Tom again until the next morning." "You should have gone to the police," I suggested, even though I knew it might not help much. "How could I?" she exclaimed, and the tears began to flow down her face again. When she calmed down, she explained that the next day her husband threatened her that if she did not cooperate, he would invite his friends and everything would be different. After some discussion, she agreed to go to a bar and let a stranger pick her up, believing that this was a less harsh option than the alternative. "Why don't you just leave him?" I asked. "Maybe you should," Cindy replied. "But I guess in a way I still love him." "Well, maybe I still love him." "What's he expecting you to do tonight?" I asked her. "Oh, I'm not sure," she answered sadly. Maybe go out with some guy or something. I just don't know. Why don't we do that now, Cindy? She looked at me with a mix of disappointment, mistrust, and even horror. I'm not sure how to describe it. I hoped that... Don't worry, I cut her off. You're safe with me, and your husband will think you're doing as he wants. Hesitantly, she allowed me to lead her to the exit, clearly still unsure if she could trust me. As we left, I caught Jerry's eye, and he gave me a look of surprise. I would explain things to him later. Once we reached my car, we leaned against it, and I told her to take her time and compose herself, handing her my handkerchief to dry her tears. Thanks, Rich, she murmured. It was all the gratitude I needed. Soon, Cindy leaned into me, and I instinctively wrapped my arms around her, much like I would comfort a distressed child. We stood there, holding each other, and found it incredibly comforting as I felt her tension ease. I lowered my head and gave her a gentle kiss on the forehead. It seemed like a natural gesture, though it might have surprised Cindy. She lifted her head to look at me and I found myself kissing her more deeply, this time on the lips. What was meant to be a brief peck turned into a lingering kiss just a second or two too long. We gazed at each other for a fleeting moment, and then Cindy leaned in to kiss me again. Our second kiss grew increasingly passionate as she pressed her slender, beautiful body against me, and I responded in kind. The straps of her dress slipped off her shoulders, confirming my earlier suspicion that she wasn't wearing anything underneath. We were in each other's arms, exchanging kisses. It happened. It wasn't what I wanted, but it happened anyway. I'm sorry, Cindy, I muttered, although I didn't release the tight grip I was still holding. This shouldn't have happened. Oh, Rich. Oh, Rich, she said, and her response to my kisses became even more passionate. I found myself in a dilemma. Of course, I wanted to drag her into my car and take advantage of the moment. But what would it give me? Thoughts of my wife's behavior swirled through my mind, and I was overcome by a sense of doubt and guilt. I think we should lift your dress, Cindy, I suggested. Yes, Rich. Thank you. I think we should, she agreed, but made no move to cover herself. That was the end of it. Exactly. Cindy walked away from me, smiling nervously when I saw her figure. She reluctantly straightened her dress and tidied herself up. Thanks, Rich, she repeated. It must have been hard. It was, I confirmed, already feeling some regret that I had stopped. I need to get back to that, she said. He'll want to know what happened. What are you going to tell him, Cindy? I'm not sure, she replied. I'll tell him whatever he wants to hear. I'll figure something out. We exchanged glances, Cindy perhaps contemplating how things might have turned out if we had met before Tom came into the picture. I know I was. Will I see you again? I asked. I'm not sure, Rich, she answered, but it might be best if we don't. This isn't the end, Cindy. Tom isn't going to stop. He won't suddenly change. I know, she cried, tears streaming down her face once more. I'll just have to manage somehow. Please, at least give me your phone number, I urged. Maybe I could help. I can't, Rich, Cindy said. I'm afraid to. But maybe if you give me yours. And that's how we left it. I gave her my number, and after one final kiss, she turned and walked back towards the bar entrance, leaving me standing there feeling utterly helpless and alone. With one last glance and a tender smile, she was gone. Gone forever from my life. Feeling a deep sadness, I got into my car to drive home, where my own problems awaited. We can't keep living like this. Whether it was a question or a statement, my wife was right. Our family life was a mess. We both studiously avoided each other. Neither of us wanted to make the first move. We didn't even sleep in the same bedroom anymore, and she was reluctant to cook for me. Okay, I conceded. What can you say about your actions? Don't you dare talk to me like I'm a schoolgirl, Corinne snapped angrily. I have repeatedly told you that I did not allow any of them to have intimacy with me. So what do you call what I saw last night? I protested vehemently. You let other men kiss and touch you. You're not acting like my wife. Damn you, Rich, she spat. You're so cocky. What's wrong with me having a little fun if it doesn't hurt you? I've been working as a housewife all week, so why don't I relax from time to time? Well, I let some guys touch me, so what? I like it. They like it. And it doesn't affect you in any way. I never held back when you wanted to make love. It seemed that our discussion was quickly coming to naught. Perhaps there was some logic in her arguments, but I did not notice it. So you think it's acceptable that other men touch someone else's wife? Why not? Corinne almost screamed back at me. This is my body, and I decide who can touch it and who can't. You haven't been much use lately, so if you don't like it, then you're out of luck. What if I had done what you did, Corinne? I asked, trying to control my anger and reason with her. How would you feel if I went and got intimate with some girl I picked up at a bar? You? Corinne grinned. Are you with another woman? You wouldn't have the guts, you pathetic weakling. If another woman had shown interest in you, you would have run away. Ah, it struck a chord, didn't it? Memories of last night came flooding back to me, reminding me of how exciting it was to hold another beautiful woman in my arms. I thought about telling her about it to shock her, but I changed my mind and didn't say anything. I thought it was the right choice, and I stuck to my opinion anyway. What I did was nothing compared to Corinne's actions or her attitude. I don't think this conversation is going to lead to anything, Corinne, I said, trying to defuse the situation. Damn it, it's not like that, you spineless loser, Corinne screamed, completely losing her composure. I'm meeting Judy again tonight, and maybe you'll have something to worry about. Listen, Corinne, But it was no use. She turned abruptly and ran into her bedroom, slamming the door with such force that the whole house shook. Oh my God. What should I do? I poured myself a glass of my signature cognac and sank into my favorite chair, waiting to see if Corinne would calm down. I had no idea what she might do next. I began to wonder if I still knew my wife. Don't wait for me, Rich, Corinne said with a hint of bitterness as she walked down the stairs. Maybe I'll come home tonight, maybe I won't. I looked up, hoping to talk, but I was caught off guard. Corinne, my wife, was dressed provocatively. If the dress she was wearing that evening seemed revealing to me, then her current outfit seemed almost repulsive to me. She was wearing red shoes with 4 or 5-inch heels. The tight black miniskirt was so short that it barely covered her. She was wearing a sheer white blouse with a slit to the middle of her waist. You look like a girl of easy virtue, I said with a feeling of despair. I'm not going to sell this today, dear. I'm going to give it away for free, she replied with a furious look. Here, let me show you what I'm going to offer. She even showed it to me. Look, do you think I'll have a lot of fans? Corinne, please put on your underwear, I begged. You can't go out like this, you might get attacked. Go to hell, asshole. They don't have to attack me. I'll invite them myself. Corinne continued to stand. I felt an unexpected calmness. I don't know why or how, but I felt it. If you go out in that outfit and with that attitude, Corinne, I said firmly, our relationship is over. I won't be here when you get back. Forget about yourself, Rich, she shouted back. You've been holding me back for years, and now it's my turn to have fun. I'll kiss whoever I want and maybe even sleep with whoever I want, and there's nothing you can do about it. As I looked up at her, I wondered where the love in our lives had disappeared. Not long ago, this woman had been the center of my world, and I would have done anything for her. I had been completely devoted to her. I questioned when she had stopped loving me, as it seemed she no longer did, and I couldn't understand the disdain she now seemed to have for me. All right, Corinne, I said, trying to deflate her attitude. Go on then. Enjoy yourself. Just be careful crossing the street. What's that supposed to mean, Rich? Corinne replied, her mouth hanging open, perhaps realizing she had gone too far. Is that all you have to say? No, just one more thing, Corinne, I added. Why don't you just get lost? With that, I stood up and walked into the kitchen, not for any particular reason other than to make a point. I leaned against the sink, sighed deeply, and waited to see what she would do, half dreading that she might actually come after me to apologize. But no. She must have thought about it, though, as it wasn't until a full 5 or 6 minutes later that I heard the clicking of her high heels on the parquet flooring of our hallway, followed by the slamming of the front door. If she kept that up much longer, I'd need to have the foundations checked. That was it. Finished. Packing a bag took longer than I expected, but within an hour I was out the door and in my car, heading to a nearby hotel where my company had an account. Booking in was quick. I only reserved one night because I genuinely had no idea what my plans would be for the next few days, let alone the future. It still didn't make sense that I'd left home. Why me? About an hour later, my phone rang and I saw it was Corinne calling. I debated whether to answer, but I knew I had to deal with it eventually. Hi, Corinne. What do you want? Where the hell are you, Rich? I came back home and you're not here. I told you I wouldn't be. This was your choice, Corinne. Don't be ridiculous, Rich. Where are you? When are you coming back? Not any time soon, Corinne. Get some sleep, and maybe we can talk in the morning. Wait a minute, Rich, But I ended the call and turned off my phone. She must have had second thoughts and come home to try and make amends. Or maybe she gave up looking for other men. Who knows? I decided to let her stew over it overnight. The next morning I went to work, and of course I couldn't just turn off my work phone. By 10 o'clock, Corinne had called me 4 times, and I had run out of excuses for my secretary. So I decided to take her call and promised that I would see her at home after work. I can't say that I was thrilled about it. I'm sorry, Rich. I shouldn't have left you like that last night, she said, coming over with open arms. And I definitely shouldn't have talked to you like that. I didn't buy it this time. When she moved toward me, I stepped aside and settled on the other side of the couch. She looked genuinely disappointed. We need to talk about this, dear, she continued, following me around the room. I think you misunderstand the situation. It's not as serious as you think. So letting other guys touch you is not serious, Corinne, I retorted. I already told you, Rich, she replied, evading my question. I haven't slept with any of them. No one but you has been close to me since we got married. I suppose some of them at least touched you in an inappropriate way. It made her think. She hesitated, perhaps deciding whether to lie or confess. But to her credit, she was honest. More or less. Maybe 1 or 2 of them, Corinne finally admitted, unable to meet my gaze. All right, Corinne, I insisted. Was it 1 of them or 2? She just stared at me, confused, not knowing what to say. Well, 1 or 2. I pressed it. And exactly how many times for each of them? Good. Maybe there were a little more than 2 of them, honey. But I didn't allow it to happen too often, honestly. So we're talking about 20 or 30 men? She clearly didn't like this conversation, and she tried to take it in a different direction. I played along with her a bit before letting her change the subject. How are we going to get through this, Rich? She finally asked. I don't want to live without you, and I'm sure you still love me too. Her phrase was a little strange, but I chose not to pay attention to it. What's on your mind, Corinne? I asked. If you come home, honey, I'd compromise, she suggested. I would go out less and maybe dress differently than I used to. I was silent, just watching her. How do you like it, honey? She was almost begging. Do we have a deal? Do you understand what's going on? You cheated on me. Rich, stop being so rude, she snapped back, her face contorted with anger. I promise that I won't let anyone do this to me anymore. I've had too much to drink, and I admit that I've crossed all the boundaries. How about you don't date Judy at all? I suggested, clinging to the hope that we could work things out. And if you do, then go to a restaurant, or to a movie, or somewhere else. Jesus, Rich, she retorted. Don't you trust me? Can't you give me the opportunity to go somewhere and have fun? She just didn't get it, did she? Go and have as much fun as you want, dear, I said quietly. I'll go back to the spare room and you can do whatever you want. That's the end of the conversation. Why exactly did I have to leave our house when she was the one who was wrong? Most likely this was also the end of our marriage, although Corinne didn't seem to realize it at the time. Our life together went on almost the same as before, even a little better. At least we talked to each other, and I wasn't served food like it was poison. Corinne even took care of my underwear again. She didn't go on a date with Judy that Wednesday. She made a wonderful wife. A week later. While I was at work, my phone rang with an unfamiliar number. Hi, this is Chris, I answered. Hello, Chris, came a woman's voice. This is Cindy. Can we talk? Oh, boy. I wouldn't say I had forgotten Cindy or how nice she felt in my arms, but I had pretty much assumed I'd never hear from her again. My life was already complicated enough without adding her issues into the mix. Of course we can, Cindy. How can I help? Is everything all right? All right. So I'm a sucker for a distressed woman. It's a bit forward, Rich, she continued, but could I ask you for a favor, please? Why do women do that? Why do they ask if they can ask for a favor? If you say yes, it's like you've already agreed to whatever they want. Sure thing, Cindy, I said. What's going on? Told you I was a sucker. It's Tom, my husband, she explained. The story I told him about what happened between us has kept him satisfied for a while, but now he's been pushing me to take it a step further. How much longer? Was that a stupid question? He wants me to be intimate with another man in front of him, she admitted. Her discomfort was obvious even on the phone. Wait a second, Cindy. I started to object, but she interrupted me. Rich, please don't get me wrong. I'm not asking for it. I wouldn't do that. I told him that I would go and do it with someone else, and then I would tell him everything. It's not what he really wants, but it will allow him to get rid of me for a while until I figure out what to do. So what exactly do you want from me, Cindy? I was hoping that we could meet somewhere in a public place where he could see me leaving with you and assume the worst. You can leave right after that if you don't want to stay, and I'll go to a movie or something, and then I'll come home with a story. I've thought about it. Poor thing. Why do some women have to deal with such men? There was desperation in her voice, and she was probably worried that he would bring his friends. What will she do in the end? How about we invite you to dinner, Cindy? I suggested it. There's no point in ruining the evening. She seemed to really like my suggestion. I picked Wednesday on purpose, knowing that Corinne would be out with Judy. She left early in high spirits, even taking the time to give me a quick kiss on the cheek. At least she was dressed quite modestly, although she had been dressing like that before when I caught her previously. I won't be late, honey, she called out. You'll see. This won't hurt you at all. She flashed me a smile, and I returned it. She still didn't seem to understand, did she? She barely noticed that I was getting ready to go out as well, and I left shortly after her. Hi, Rich, a voice greeted me as I scanned the bar. Wow. Cindy had looked good the first time I met her, but standing there that evening, I was stunned. She wasn't just pretty. She was absolutely stunning in a gorgeous little blue dress. You look different tonight, I said. I dressed up for a man I really like tonight, she replied with a grin. The other night, I was here against my will. Well, you look beautiful, Cindy, I said. I'm delighted to take you out tonight. I leaned in to give her a kiss on the cheek, but she pulled me in and gave me a full, lovely kiss on the lips. Wow, I exclaimed when we broke apart. That was for Tom's benefit, she said, glancing cautiously behind her. But if you really believe that, then you're a fool. Discreetly, I glanced behind her and saw a blue shirt, though that evening he was wearing a brown jumper. It just didn't have the same ring. "Let's get another round for his sake," I suggested. We moved closer, and I recalled how amazing her slim body felt pressed against mine. Perfect. "Shall we go?" I asked, having quenched my immediate thirst. "Where to?" she asked with a glint in her eye. "Does it matter?" "No," Cindy answered, suddenly serious. "Anywhere you want to go, I'll follow." It felt like she was ready to hop onto my trusty steed and ride off into the sunset. But instead we walked a short distance down the high street to an Italian restaurant I had reserved earlier. Not as romantic as a sunset ride, but still very pleasant. We enjoyed a delightful meal with a bottle of Chianti and chatted like old friends. Can you believe it? I'd found a girl who supported Arsenal, the best football club in the world. Her whole family were devoted Arsenal fans, so what more could I ask for? We were having an amazing time and had just moved on to a newly opened bar in town, where I found myself dancing with the most stunning girl in the place. What could be more perfect, and what could possibly go wrong? You guessed it. My wife Corinne walked in with Judy and a group of guys tagging along. She was wearing the same dress but had hiked up the skirt by about 6 inches and undone half the buttons down the front. I glanced at Corinne and then at Cindy and questioned what I had ever seen in my wife. She was attractive, of course, but in terms of sophistication and style, she didn't hold a candle to Cindy. It was time to confess to Cindy, though it wasn't going to be easy since we hadn't even talked about my marital status. "What's up, Rich?" Cindy asked before I had the chance to say anything. "That woman over there with that group," I pointed out. "Unfortunately, that's my wife." "The redhead or the one who looks a bit trashy?" Cindy asked, seemingly genuinely curious. Ouch, I wouldn't want to cross her. "Yes, the blonde," I admitted reluctantly. "Poor you," she said, still keeping her gaze fixed on Corinne. "How did a nice guy like you end up with someone like that?" If a guy had said that to me, I'd probably have punched him, but coming from Cindy, I just swallowed hard and kept quiet. "Are you aware of her reputation around town?" That comment from Cindy really caught my attention. "So you know her?" I had to ask. "No, but my damn husband Tom does," Cindy said with an accusatory tone. "And he expects me to be like her." Oh dear. What a small world. Maybe Corinne hadn't been entirely honest with me. "Does she sleep around?" I asked nervously, feeling awkward for having to inquire about my own wife through my date. "Is the Pope Catholic?" Cindy replied. Given the situation, it wasn't amusing, and she quickly apologized. I briefly explained my situation to Cindy, and her eyes conveyed everything. We both had our issues, but I wasn't sure how to handle mine. "Come on," Cindy said, pulling me up from the chair. Before I knew it, she was guiding me over to the group around Corinne and Judy. "Hi, everyone," my date announced as she stood in front of them. They all turned to look, and if any of them recognized her, they didn't let on. The only clear thing was that she completely outshone the other 2 women. "Maybe you know Rich," she boldly introduced me. "Ladies, if you want to experience what a real man is like instead of wasting time with these losers, here he is." Well, that certainly got everyone excited, didn't it? For a moment it seemed to me that a confrontation was inevitable. I was ready for this, but I didn't expect Cindy's reaction, did I? "Corinne," she called to my wife, who stood in stunned silence watching us. "If you're not going to appreciate him, then I will." With these words, she gave everyone a smile, kissed me passionately, and then took my hand and led me out of the pub. The last time I saw my wife, she was gaping in shock and chaos reigned around her. Wow, what a scene. We were just walking back to the car, laughing uncontrollably, when Cindy's phone rang. I overheard her talking. "Hi, Tom. I'm busy. What do you want?" "No, Rich isn't here right now, so we can talk if we need to." She looked at me and winked. "Yes, I'll probably sleep with him." She winked at me again. What was that supposed to mean? No, I'm not bringing him home for you to watch him. No, Tom, I won't do it. I don't care what you threaten, Tom. I won't do it. Okay, get out of here, you weird jerk, and don't expect me home tonight. With that, she hung up the phone and threw the phone into the back seat. I never want to go back to him, Rich, she said with a newfound confidence in her voice. There's no future for me there. What do you want to do then, Cindy? I asked. I find myself in the same position as you. Is there somewhere we can go? Good question. How about Brighton? I proposed. Brighton? Cindy almost squealed with surprise. You mean Brighton by the sea? Exactly, I confirmed, just as surprised as she was by my spontaneous suggestion. I know a great little hotel there, and I could use a few days off work anyway. Let's go, Cindy decided. So I took the next left turn, and soon we were on our way to the famous seaside resort, where we spent the next 4 days and nights getting to know each other much better. The outcome. Yes, Corinne and I were divorced within 6 months, and she didn't put up much of a fight over the divorce settlement. She remarried soon after, but that relationship didn't last either. I do believe she has come to realize just how much she messed up her life, but she understands that the solution doesn't lie with me. As for Judy and Neil, they continue on, but they're no longer in touch with Corinne. I see them from time to time, though Neil and I have never really clicked. Cindy and I? No, we didn't last in the end. The 15-year age gap proved too much. We did have a fantastic 9 or 10 months filled with what felt like constant intimacy, but ultimately I couldn't keep up. She's now dating Jerry, my former 50-pound friend who has turned out to be quite a good buddy of mine. It turns out he was more than just the bartender. He actually co-owned the place, so Cindy should be well taken care of. I'm happy for her. Tom, no idea. He just vanished. I considered introducing him to Corinne at one point, but why would I? Angelica? Ah, of course you don't know about Angelica. Let's just say I met her at the tennis club I joined to get in shape, and now she's the love of my life. She comes with her wonderful 4-year-old daughter Sophie, who I've grown to see as my own more and more each day. And let's not forget young Rich Jr., my own son, who will be celebrating his first birthday in a couple of weeks. Life goes on.